A lot of people think that if you drink less, you will have to pee less.
Yeah.
That is not true. That is a myth. When you are not hydrated, so let's say you're dehydrated, your urine is more concentrated. So if you think your urine it consists of all of the waste products that your body's trying to get out. We don't really want it sitting in our bladder for that long. So when you are dehydrated, your urine is more concentrated. And if your bladder wall is a bit irritated for whatever reason, it might be sensitive to those toxins that are in your urine. Or for example, if you are consuming like bladder irritants like caffeine or alcohol or spicy foods or tomatoes, like those are kind of the top bladder irritants, that can trigger some symptoms, especially if your bladder wall is already, a bit aggravated.
Today's episode is one I know many of you have been waiting for, especially if you've ever found yourself constantly scanning for the nearest bathroom, cutting workouts short, or struggling to stay hydrated without triggering the urge to pee yet again. We're talking about overactive bladder, or OAB, a condition that affects millions yet is often misunderstood or brushed off as just something to deal with. I'm thrilled to be joined by Callie K, MSRD, also known as the Bladder Dietitian. Let's get into it. Super excited to have you on today. I think this is a really important talk. I've gotten actually some requests for chat around overactive bladder, so I'm happy to have you on because I know you're the expert in this topic.
The expert. Thank you. I'm so excited to talk about all things bladder.
Yeah, for sure. I guess just to start off and give listeners some background around you, I'm sure probably quite a few people are listening are already familiar with you, but for those who aren't, just tell us a bit more about yourself, where you're located, how you help people, and who you help.
Yes, so I am Callie Krajcir. I am located about an hour outside of Philadelphia in the United States. I am a bladder dietitian, so you probably didn't know that we existed, and that's because I'm the first person that is like actually specializing in bladder health. The conditions that I help people with include interstitial cystitis and overactive bladder and some overlapping conditions as well. And I am an IC and an OAB patient. I struggled with bladder pain for the first 25 years of my life. I am now totally pain-free, and I also struggled with OAB during my college years, and I was able to also completely overcome that, and I pee normally now, and yeah, I'm basically helping people get relief like I have through lifestyle changes, and we're just really focused on the hope element of living with these chronic conditions. And I just really like to help people understand that you can overcome these symptoms, you can live a normal life. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you work mainly with women or work with like all?
Yeah, I just work with women. I am currently developing a self-study option for my program that men can do. So that is going to launch in a couple of weeks.
Cool. Awesome. And I guess for yourself, like when you first started dealing with the symptoms of those conditions, like how did you sort of find yourself, I guess, maybe trying to reach out for support in the medical community and sort of navigating like the condition in the early stages?
Yeah. So like I said, bladder pain since I was a kid. So that was really tough for me navigating that because no one around me was talking about their bladder or they were struggling with always going to the toilet. And so I kind of just suffered in silence until I was 18. I ended up getting diagnosed with IC. I had this procedure done called a hydrodistension where they essentially put you under anesthesia and they blow your bladder up and they stretch it.
Oh, wow.
And after that procedure, I developed urinary frequency and urgency. So I felt like I had to pee all the time. I was going every 20 minutes. I was living on the toilet and it really affected my life. Those were my college years, unfortunately. And there was just a ton going on. I was playing volleyball in college. I was studying. I was eating different foods, doing different social events, drinking alcohol. So there was a lot going on, and I got the OAB diagnosis kind of easily because I already had that IC diagnosis, and a lot of people do just get diagnosed with both. And yeah, after that, I started my treatment journey. Happy to elaborate on that, but I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Yeah. And I can imagine too, like just with all the things that you want to be doing in university, like for one, being in class and being able to like sit through the lecture, but also like engaging in like extracurriculars, playing sports, like those are all things that you need to be present for, and you can't be running to the washroom every 20 minutes.
Yeah. I remember I think it was either biology or anatomy class, and just thinking like, I just went to the bathroom 10 minutes ago. I cannot go to the bathroom again, even though I feel like my bladder is going to explode, because I'm so afraid that people were going to judge me and be like, why is this girl like leaving or going to the bathroom so much? So it was definitely a mind game in addition to the physical symptoms.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess just breaking down overactive bladder, OAB, like how do you know that it is something you're dealing with versus just like needing to pee a lot because you drink a lot of fluids and coffee? Like what's sort of the difference there?
No, that's a good question. So, I mean, the average person urinates like 6 to 8 times per day. That's what's considered normal, and then 0 to 1 times at night. And so, I mean, like you said, like if you're overhydrated or you're hydrating well, like that may be a little bit more. But if you're getting to the point where it's getting in the way of you living your life and you feel like it is excessive, like that is the point where you may want to get connected with a urologist or urogynecologist.
Right.
But like the common symptoms of overactive bladder are that sudden, intense urge to urinate, feeling like you have to pee all the time. Maybe you just went and then you stand up and you already feel like you have to go again. Waking up multiple times at night, we call that nocturia. And then some people experience incontinence, usually urge incontinence, which means you might leak urine before you go to the bathroom. And there's also stress incontinence, which just means like when you feel stressed, that is when that symptom arises. So those are like the common symptoms of OAB.
Yeah. And do you feel like it's something that just happens like in isolation, or is it sort of like a secondary, result of sort of a bigger cause, like pelvic floor dysfunction or, other sort of conditions?
Overlapping with a lot of conditions like pelvic floor dysfunction, like IC, like IBS, chronic fatigue, autoimmune conditions, things like that. And yeah, I'm sure we're going to talk about like root causes, things like that. But the most common root cause, what is causing these symptoms in my clients, is a dysregulated nervous system, which usually is triggering pelvic floor dysfunction as well. So it's kind of like this domino effect.
Okay, that's interesting. Actually, leading into that, can you break down sort of the common root causes of overactive bladder?
Yeah, for sure. So we don't have any like set in stone, these are known causes outside of like neurological conditions like MS, Parkinson's, spinal cord issues that can lead directly to OAB symptoms. But for a lot of people, there's no physical cause. And so actually, pelvic floor dysfunction can be a physical cause. I shouldn't say that. But yeah, pelvic floor dysfunction is a common one. So if your pelvic floor muscles are really tight, or they can be loose. Usually I see people being tight or dysfunctional. They're not working properly. That can cause more pressure on your bladder and that urge to urinate. The nervous system dysfunction. So if you are stuck in a state of fight or flight, like that is going to it could trigger a variety of physical symptoms, but for people with OAB, that's going to trigger the bladder symptoms.
Interesting.
So that's a topic we can definitely dive into. I really love talking about that. There's hormone issues that some people can experience where maybe they have like estrogen atrophy, and they may experience an increase in their urinary symptoms. A lot of the times we'll see pain with that, but I think there are people that don't have pain. There could be some other things, but I would say those are the top couple.
Okay. And so when you say nervous system dysregulation, like what does that mean, and what is the cause of that, I guess, in most people?
Great question.
Yeah.
So, where do we start with this? So your nervous system is meant to protect you from threats. We have a couple of different nervous system states that we go through just as humans. We are wired to have a state of rest and digest. We have fight or flight, we have freeze. And so when there is some sort of threat, whether that is like a lion is chasing you, whether that is a car accident or something normal, like a meeting that you have at work, or like a fight that you have with a friend or a family member, like that can also be viewed as a threat or as some sort of stress. And our nervous systems are meant to go through this stress response where, we go into that fight or flight response, and there's a lot of different things that happen in your body. It pumps out these stress hormones that get you ready to either fight something or run away from it. And that can lead to your digestion slowing down, different changes like your breathing gets shallow, your blood pressure increases, things like that. And there's also a freeze response, but I'm going to kind of skip it to keep this on the shorter side. So we're meant to, once that threat goes away, go back into that rest and digest / safety state where everything is calm. Our breathing goes back to being very deep, and we have like no tension in our body. We don't have any sort of threat, and we just feel calm and safe. That's where we're supposed to end up. But people with chronic symptoms like OAB, IC, IBS, whatever that may be, we are getting stuck in that chronic stress state, which means, that's where you start to see digestive issues. That's where you start to see urinary issues. Maybe you have chronic pain. I see a lot of people coming to me who have developed these characteristic traits that are things like perfectionism, people pleasing, always needing to be in control, rumination, having a sense of urgency to figure out what's wrong with you or just like get stuff done as soon as possible. And these, I've come to learn, are our body's way of coping and adapting to stress and trauma. So I feel like I just talked a whole lot, but did that make sense?
Yeah, no, that definitely did make sense. I think with stress, like even, it's not something that we can avoid entirely. And like stress is actually can be a positive thing because like you said, it like motivates us to react, and like our body sort of gets resources ready. And like in certain circumstances, like preparing for a test or, even athletes at a competition, like it gets you ready, it gets you excited to actually perform better. But if we're always sort of reacting in the like fight or flight response to everything and every little stressor, and then maybe we don't have time to sort of come down between those events and get back into the rest and digest and sort of have better mechanisms of maybe, being more resilient to the stress and coping with it, that's when sort of it can cause, our body and nervous system to go off track and then result in sort of these conditions like overactive bladder and with IBS too, because of the gut brain connection. I guess with IBS, we say, like, we talk a lot about the gut brain axis. I guess, I haven't heard it yet, but is there a bladder brain axis?
Not that I've seen, but I'm sure we can assume that there's something there. I mean, I think there is a big connection, especially between the gut and the bladder. I mean, for me personally, when my IBS flares up, my bladder will also flare up. It's the most annoying thing in the world, but it's like, this is a total stress response. That is my number one trigger. I only ever have a little bit of symptoms as a result of some sort of like big stress in life. And I'm kind of on that nervous system regulation journey, but it's definitely all connected. Usually there's some sort of pelvic floor dysfunction involved. And I mean, I truly believe that the root of bladder conditions, at least the OAB and IC, I believe it is that nervous system, and teaching it that it is safe, that there is a threat, and the clients that I work with who we work on these practices, nervous system regulation practices, their symptoms, I have people who get relief within a couple of weeks. It's honestly mind-blowing, but at the same time, like, it's not surprising once you really get educated on it. And it's amazing how powerful that work is.
Yeah, definitely. I know even, I guess I should ask, have you read the book, When the Body Says No? By
I have
No, okay.
a pile of books on this topic. I just have not gotten to that one yet.
Yeah. So that one, I think it was published like early 2000s, but the idea behind it is that sort of like being in a state of emotional repression, where maybe you, for a lot of people, like maybe grew up in like a controlling family or always sort of had to be on your best behavior, or sort of like were the parent like as a child and didn't really have like supportive family relationship, that then can sort of lead to like, internal stress in older life, and maybe a lack of having boundaries, or sort of a lack of like self-care mechanisms. And then in turn, that sort of creates that like internal stress and can cause the immune system to sort of like go out of whack or go off track, and can result in like different sort of disease states. So I think it kind of links back to what you said about the nervous system regulation. And probably for some people, maybe it's like a little bit easier to fix through sort of daily practices, but then other people maybe need to work through things a little bit deeper, like therapy or sort of that, like, deeper practice. But it's very interesting.
I've been digging into some of the resources. I recently read the Pain Reprocessing Therapy Workbook. It is phenomenal. Even if you don't have pain, you can substitute whatever symptom you're experiencing for the word pain. And that is, we did book club in my program on that. Everyone loved it. It helped so many people. Another good one is not that one. Well, The Body Keeps the Score is really good, but I was thinking of The Way Out by Alan Gordon is another good one.
Yeah. So is that kind of the concept of just like the words and the vocabulary that you use?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I like I think it was Tony Robbins who developed it, but the concept of transformational vocabulary. So just catching like the words that you use. And a lot of us just tend to default to like inflammatory words like frustrated or anxious or pain or depressed. But even just trying to swap those words for maybe less inflammatory words, like you're feeling challenged instead of frustrated, or your body's working through something instead of feeling pain, like even just that can actually help your nervous system to calm down a little bit. So even just like the way that we talk about our body and the way we talk about our symptoms can make a difference. It's crazy how complex it is. And I think that's one thing that maybe the sort of conventional medical system doesn't fully focus on, is sort of that real impact of like the mind and emotional and mental stress, and how it really can impact like development of disease, and then also our ability to like manage.
Right. It's hard because when you go to a doctor, they might mention like, hey, how's your stress? And it's like, we don't really realize how impactful that is. You may not feel stressed, but a lot of us on a day-to-day basis, like our baseline is super high. We're just used to the go of day-to-day life. And, for me, I didn't really take stress seriously back when I was going through all my treatment journey and everything. I was dead set on the idea that there would be some sort of medication or medical treatment that was going to cure my symptoms. And spoiler alert, they did not. I tried everything offered to me. No relief was given. And a lot of the things made me worse because they were invasive. And I was a very sensitive person, physically and mentally. But yeah, I didn't get relief until I really started focusing on, okay, what is at the root of the problem? Okay, it's my nervous system and my pelvic floor. Let's get those things addressed. And after that, it only took a couple months for me to get relief. It was crazy after suffering for over 2 decades.
And just sort of getting to the actual root of what was contributing. Yeah. What are sort of the typical like medical treatments that would be prescribed for OAB?
For OAB, pelvic floor physical therapy is a big one.
Okay.
that, I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. I would definitely, if you have bladder symptoms, like be evaluated by a PT if you have the means.
Yeah, for sure.
You obviously want to rule out infection. Just wanted to say that just in case, we want to make sure that that's not in existence. There are some medications you can try. There's things like Mirbetriq, Gemtesa, amitriptyline, a couple things, but it's all going to be trial and error. You could do bladder training. You could try like the stim, like the nerve stimulation. There's Botox injections that you can get in your bladder, but obviously that is a bit risky because some people develop retention and they can't pee on their own. They have to catheterize themselves. And so a lot of it does come with risks.
Definitely. So I guess, like, do you typically suggest, I think I know the answer, but to sort of work on maybe the nervous system regulation, getting a bit more into what's contributing to the OAB versus trying like these medications or sort of these more invasive therapies?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to tell people what to do. We have to be careful with that. But I always frame it like, if I were to be diagnosed with OAB again, if I could go back and do it again, I would focus on my nervous system first. I would adjust my pelvic floor at pelvic floor PT right away. And I would make sure I'm doing just the normal things like staying hydrated and, seeing if I have any sort of diet irritants, which we could talk about that. But that's kind of where I would start.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
And I want to say no judgment if anybody tries medications and all that stuff I just mentioned. I did it. So absolutely no judgment there. Some of this stuff does work for people, but for me, it didn't.
So it sounds like there's a lot of avenues to explore. And I think it's worth it, like working with the right treatment team. So I think based on what you're saying, probably if someone could build like their perfect treatment team for OAB, there would be obviously a dietitian specializing in bladder health, pelvic floor therapist, and I guess a urologist is sort of your medical specialist. Would you add anything or?
I have found more success as a woman with a urogynecologist, but you never know. A urologist could get the job done and then like men would see them.
Yeah. Is that a common specialty? I don't know.
Yeah, it's fairly common here. I don't know about in Canada if you guys have that.
I don't know if I've ever even heard that term before.
Maybe it's just because you're not really in this niche, but who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So they obviously do a combination of gynecology and urology. Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. I guess we can talk a little bit more around the link between IBS or sort of digestive conditions and bladder issues. I know I see it a lot with my IBS clients, like some who are very active, like I have some runners with gut issues or IBS, and something that they complain about is like frequent need to pee on their runs, which is not fun. And then I have some clients who aren't as active, but obviously working to like get your bowels moving and support your bowel health. Part of that is hydration, but it could be difficult when they're needing to like pee pretty frequently, and that kind of works against people or sort of a barrier to staying well hydrated. So yeah, do you want to maybe walk us through a little bit more about what the connection is between sort of the gut and the bladder?
Yeah, I think we brushed on it a little bit. I mean, I think there is some organ crosstalk going on. I do see a lot of overlap with digestive issues and bladder issues, and not a fun combination. I mean, I told you I've had both things going on, and it's just a lot. And you really just got to find what is causing this. Is it a stress issue? Is it a pelvic floor issue? Is it something else? But I know you mentioned hydration. That is something I really want to emphasize here. A lot of people think that if you drink less, you will have to pee less.
Yeah.
That is not true. As a myth, when you are not hydrated, so let's say you're dehydrated, your urine is more concentrated. So if you think your urine it consists of all of the waste products that your body's trying to get out. We don't really want it sitting in our bladder for that long. So when you are dehydrated, your urine is more concentrated. And if your bladder wall is a bit irritated for whatever reason, it might be sensitive to those toxins that are in your urine. Or, for example, if you are consuming like bladder irritants like caffeine or alcohol or spicy foods or tomatoes, like those are kind of the top bladder irritants, that can trigger some symptoms, especially if your bladder wall is already, a bit aggravated. So we need to have hydration. I usually tell people, because everyone's hydration needs are different. If you're working out, it's going to be more. If you live in a hot climate and you're sweating more, you're going to need more. If you're on certain medications, might need more. And yeah, there's a lot of different factors there. So just generally, I tell people shoot for the 8 glasses, the 64 ounces, give or take. And once you're hydrated, that is where you can start working on things like bladder training and like rewiring that connection between your bladder and your brain that is kind of miscommunicating at that point. Because a lot of people with those symptoms of frequency and urgency, like they're only peeing a little bit usually. And that's because the bladder has somehow gotten trained to alert your brain that it's time to go before it's actually ready to go. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but hydration is like the number one first step I would start at.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like that you address that myth, because I've definitely had new clients who are like, I can only drink 5 cups a day, otherwise I have to pee all the time and I can't go more than that. But to your point, like being dehydrated actually will make the symptoms worse. So it's not going to work against you. As for me, typically I'll, like if someone is struggling with overactive bladder, I generally just reinforce like trying to start drinking and hydrating early in the morning and sort of sipping through the day. So you're spreading out that fluid intake. Usually suggest maybe tapering it off like by dinner time. And then if they have something after dinner, like a little bit of herbal tea that they sip on. I know sometimes just trying to be mindful of caffeine, citrus juices, alcohol, sort of the big triggers. And then trying not to, I guess, always pee like just in case. So that's sort of what I recommend. But is there anything else that you maybe suggest for your clients, or anything you'd add to that for like?
It's funny, I just took a class like an hour ago on certain bladder habits to stop doing, and peeing just in case was one of them.
Yes.
So yeah, just in case is essentially training your bladder to go when it is a little bit too early. Mm-hmm. And there are certain times where peeing just in case is okay. That is after sex, before bed, when you wake up in the morning, and if you're going on like a car or a plane ride longer than an hour and a half to 2 hours, where there's not going to be any sort of bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
So peeing just in case is one. Pushing to pee, that is recipe for disaster. If you're having issues where you can't pee unless you're pushing, go to the pelvic floor physical therapist. Another one is rushing to the toilet. So if you are like hustling to the toilet and like you feel like you're going to pee your pants, you're kind of retraining your brain and your bladder to not really work together. It's telling yourself that your bladder's in charge and not your brain. So you really need to work on calmly walking to the bathroom if you have that urge. And then another big one that women are usually guilty of is hovering over the toilet. This is okay.
What does that mean? Like if you're using a public toilet?
Yes.
And you're like squatting, so you're not sitting?
Correct. Yes.
Oh.
Once in a while, this is okay. You're at like your kid's.
What if it's like a nasty toilet though, and you don't want to sit?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Just don't make it a habit, because there's some risks there. Your pelvic floor like really can't relax like it should.
Yeah.
You have an increased risk of like having some urine left over, which could increase your risk of UTI. You could risk like prolapse. Like there's some things that if this is habitual, like it can increase your risk of certain things. So I know that public toilet seats can be nasty. So like, use your best judgment. But for me, I just take the toilet paper, I wipe it, and then I put another layer on, and then I sit down. It's just so much easier to sit down. Yeah. So yeah, those are some of the bladder habits that I would recommend.
Okay. Is that a common thing for I don't think it's something that I've done, but but it like to hover over the toilet, is that like a way to work your glute muscles a bit more, or wondering why that's common?
No, most of the women in my life, like I know a lot of people do this, and
Huh.
yeah, I don't know if this is a society difference. I mean, I know when I went to like Europe, some of the places didn't even have toilet seats, and I'm like, how are you supposed to do this?
Yes. Okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe in those cultures it's a little different, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows? I don't know what their rates of overactive bladder and pelvic floor
Exactly.
dysfunction are, but yeah, interesting. Okay. Um. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's really really helpful. Anything else you'd add to like the dietary triggers, I guess,
Yeah.
to be mindful of? It sounds like it's not really the big, like, sort of maybe contributor for most people, but yeah, for people who maybe diet is contributing, what would you add to that list?
Right. So, I mean, just for the average human, like drinks that contain caffeine are going to make you pee more. It's just, okay, are we drinking these things in moderation, like the coffee, the tea, things like that? And I will say that most of the people that I work with aren't diet sensitive, but for those people who are, it's usually a symptom of another underlying condition like we talked about before. And once they address those conditions, diet sensitivity usually goes away. Okay. That doesn't mean like if somebody went crazy and drank a bunch of alcohol that they're going to have like totally normal urine output. Like, no, everything within moderation. But I would say if you are at the beginning of your journey or if you're in a flare up, you may want to be mindful of consuming some of the things I've been talking about, the alcohol, the coffee, the like if you're like a black tea drinker, that's one. Carbonated beverages can be bothersome for some people. In terms of foods, we're looking at citrus products, juices, like you said, tomatoes, tomato products, spicy foods, things like that. Yeah, those are like the top offenders usually. But again, don't assume you're diet sensitive. If you want to know for sure, you can do an elimination diet where you remove these items for a couple of weeks and then you test them back in one at a time to determine if you are sensitive to it. But I will say, if you are sensitive to something, that doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever. Like I said, you can overcome this as your symptoms decrease.
Similar with IBS too, because a lot of the food intolerances are then like sort of driven by the gut brain connection, and something's going on where the nerves in the gut are hypersensitive, which is not always due to like the food itself. Like it can be a microbiome imbalance or nervous system dysregulation, and then people maybe are more sensitive to things like FODMAPs or different food groups, but oftentimes sort of getting to more of the root of the issue, like working on the nervous system and even rebalancing the microbiome, then they can better tolerate those foods. So I think that's a good point as well. Like often food intolerances aren't just like the only part of the picture. Like there's usually a deeper level going on, which I think is nice for a lot of people to hear too, because most people don't want to have to cut out or be more restrictive around food. So I think that was a good one to highlight as well.
Die on that hill.
Definitely. Around caffeine, I have two follow-up questions to that. The first one, is it just the caffeine content, or is it the tannins in coffee and black tea that can increase urgency, or is it both?
It's usually the caffeine. There are some theories about the acid content in those beverages. We're not sure if the acid is playing a role.
Yeah.
Because, when you eat something like if you have like lemon juice, like it goes in as an acid, but your body digests it and it ends up being like alkaline when you digest it. So the research isn't solid in terms of tannins. I don't know. I haven't seen any research on that specifically, but it's possible that there's something out there. I might need to go look.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question was around coffee. I know it's been sort of like debated and we've gone back and forth, but the last I sort of looked at the research around like coffee and needing to pee was that if you're like sort of caffeine adapted, like you're someone who's an habitual coffee drinker, it doesn't make you have to pee as much as someone who like only drinks coffee once in a while or is like a newer coffee drinker. I don't know. Any thoughts on that or the recent
Not
change?
anything like that recently, but I'm just thinking of myself, like I feel like I'm a consistent coffee drinker and I still notice like an increase to pee after I drink my coffee, but it's nothing, like it's just a small difference in my
Yeah.
urge than like if I hadn't drank coffee. So personally, like just a little bit of a difference for me, but in terms of the research, I haven't seen anything recently on that.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like it's, yeah, maybe a little unclear. Yeah. I know for me, I always like, because I have like half a liter when I wake up and then I work out and I'll have like another liter of fluids and then I have coffee and like, well, I'll have to pee a few times in the morning, but I think it's just a combination of like fluids plus coffee. I don't know if it'd be any different if I didn't have coffee, but maybe.
Be an interesting experiment. You might feel really bad.
Yeah. Oh, and the other one around, I guess, IBS and the like the bladder connection. I know too when someone maybe struggles more with constipation or like IBS-C, so they often get like, their colon or the rectum's like full of stool, literally, that it like sort of presses on the bladder because they share like the same space. So I guess even back to like the dietary part of it, if maybe someone's not eating the right balance of fiber types or enough foods to sort of keep their bowels regular, then that may also like sort of worsen the OAB symptoms. Is that right?
Yep. Constipation is a pretty common trigger. And just like you said, like you need to address the diet component of that in addition to like the hydration and the movement and all of that stuff. But yeah, that is a pretty common thing.
Yeah. So even in that case, not so much maybe what they're eating, but maybe what they're not getting enough of
Right.
to keep sort of things regular. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, I think we went through quite a lot. I guess just to maybe take things home, what would sort of be maybe 2 or 3 takeaways for someone wanting to improve their bladder health function? Where would they get started?
By speaking to people with bladder symptoms.
Oh, you want to elaborate?
I'm just because I mean, it's going to be a little different for people that just are normal and have no bladder symptoms. They pee normally. Like for those people, I feel like maintain good hydration and, consume bladder irritants in moderation.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, just basics for them. And then for people with bladder symptoms, I mean, if you think there's something wrong, go see a urologist or urogynecologist, possibly get into pelvic PT, figure out if that's contributing. But I would say, like, if you're listening and you have OAB or you think you have OAB, just understand that there is hope that you can get relief. There may not be a ton on the internet about like what we're talking about and how to get relief, but I think the information is coming out. I mean, I'm posting everywhere on social media, like what I'm learning through working with my clients. And, there just is there is hope, and you really need to start with your mindset. You need to believe that you can get better, because if you don't, you probably won't.
Mhm.
So, I mean, those are my words of wisdom.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like it's the same with IBS or other conditions too. Like there's a lot of sort of, we'll just use the term like cookie cutter information online, like WebMD, Healthline, like all sort of the basic stuff that you've probably heard or been told. But I think it's a different thing with maybe you work with an expert or someone who specializes in this, who sees it all the time and is sort of like worked with many people in this condition and is able to sort of help you look like a bit deeper and really get to like more of the strategies that are going to give you results rather than sort of the foundational things. That's not to say like the foundational stuff can't help, but I think for a lot of people, probably with this and with IBS too, like it can be quite complex and you usually need more than just sort of the basics online for most people.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess just to end things off, how can people get in touch with you and
how can listeners learn more?
Yeah, so go follow me on social media. I'm like on Instagram and TikTok at Callie K Nutrition. I have a podcast of my own. It's called ICU. We focus on both IC and OAB and bladder health on there. I'm sure we can link that in the show notes. And then, those are the best places to connect with me.
Cool. Awesome. I'll link those in the show notes. We did talk a lot about the pelvic floor support. So I actually have a future episode coming out on pelvic floor therapy. So I'll link to that below because super important, both with IBS and with OAB, for sure. All right. Well, thanks, Callie, so much. It's been a great conversation, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of light bulb moments for listeners today. So thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.